Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and I'd like to start this meeting as quickly as possible. Alex, there's another meeting following this.
Well, you already did. Then you go.
Would you call the roll, please? This is a special meeting of council. 6:02, and would you call the roll, please?
Adams.
Here.
Jones. Here. Safrati.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Brownlee.
Here.
Tujansky.
Here.
Agee.
Here.
Albers.
Here. Kathy is going to pass out the ballots for the planning and zoning member. If you please fill yours in with your appropriate choices. And we'll hand them over to our law director. Mm-hmm. Don't sit down, Kathy. Mm-hmm. Sit down, Kathy.
Pardon me?
Don't sit down.
Oh.
Unless, John, you want to come up?
We could pass it down.
Okay, so that.
Just go right to it.
Go ahead, and then you'll give the final count, or the final.
Just call them out now, and I'll look for it.
Richard Price.
Okay.
Stafford Jeanette. Jeanette, so I say Jeanette. Senate. Stafford. 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 Richard Price. And one abstention. So Mr. Jeanette has it 4-2 with one abstention.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Stafford Jeanette
Thanks,
to the
John.
Planning and Zoning Commission for a 5-year term beginning June 1st, 2014.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Adams.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Safrati.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Brownlee.
Yes.
Tujansky.
Yes.
Agee.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, council. The ordinance 214-43, if you would like to consider passing it on the third reading, please give me an indication of that. Otherwise, we will have a second reading tonight and let it go until our third Wednesday in June. Is that everyone here?
Madam Chair, I had a few questions regarding.
Yes, can we read it first, please?
Ordinance number 2014-43, an ordinance amending section 41419 of the codified ordinances regarding traffic law photo monitoring devices and to establish an automated speed enforcement program and civil penalties for automated speed violations in the city of Maple Heights and declaring an emergency.
So I can ask for a third reading. Okay. I would like to, lost the language.
Oh, put on third and final reading.
Yes. I would like to put this on its third and final reading. And-
Second.
Second, okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Madam Chair, will we have any discussion before this motion? Regarding the suspending of the rules?
Regarding the suspension of the rules,
Yes, ma'am.
either you vote yes or no.
Yes, but there can be discussion on this motion.
If you need to discuss it, go right ahead.
Yes, I have some questions, things I think we should at least discuss before we choose to suspend the rules. So therefore, I would say that we should entertain discussion before we move even to suspend the rules.
Yes,
I would like to hear from Chief Popielarcyk. How do you feel? Because they're, the police are going to be the ones who get the reports and everything. Can we?
Oh,
Go up here.
have a seat.
Sure.
I just want to know how you feel about it.
We had some discussion, in fact, I talked to you privately after the meeting last time. My initial response to traffic cameras was negative. I didn't think too highly of them. However, in light of where, after seeing the program, seeing what was presented to us, in terms of what the enforcement options are going to be available to us, the bottom line of the reality of our circumstances is that we're going to be so far down on manpower by the end of this year that we're not really in a position where we can adequately enforce the traffic laws that these cameras would allow us to enforce anyway. When I saw the way that they did this with the LiDAR, when I saw the way that they did this with in terms of you can put the cameras where you want, where it monitors the speed, it monitors the stop signs, I think it'll be a good thing. I mean, it's not even a matter of the money issue, that's really not the point. Even from a practical standpoint, as I was talking to Mr. Brownlee last time, I mean, if I put this in a school zone, for example, in the beginning, and there's a stigma attached to it, but if you put this in a school zone, it can get a lot more done than even we could get just by making traffic stops. And the bottom line of it too is that, and I'll be the first to admit it, when you go downtown and stuff, that they're right. They're actually, there is a value to them. When people know that they're in place, they behave, they slow down, they change their behavior. So I think for those reasons, that I would encourage the passing of this.
is there any further discussion on this? We are discussing the possibility of passing this as an emergency. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. Chief, I don't particularly care for red light cameras or speeding cameras. I see a chance for abuse.
How so?
When you, depending on how you set them, as far as how many miles over the speed limit you would have to go in order for it to activate.
Okay.
So I guess my issue would be, and I would leave this up to your hands, I think I have confidence in you that it wouldn't be like 1 mile over.
No.
You know?
Absolutely not.
But you could do that though.
Well, you could.
It's right in the ordinance, you guys have control of it, it has a safe speed in the ordinance.
Well, I understand his concern. I mean, you're absolutely right, but I mean, I think that the standard would be simply pretty much what any patrol officer would do on any given day now. I mean, certainly things are more stringent in a school zone, for example, than they are on a main road. For example, what you would allow perhaps like at Broadway at midnight may be different than what you allow Broadway during the day or even a school zone during the day. But as stated, we're allowed to set those parameters, and so I can guarantee you it would not be anything like 1 mile over the speed limit. And because if we did, we wouldn't have anything to do probably all day except approve tickets or whatever the case may be with that. There'd be too much enforcement, so it has to be reasonable. And I agree with you, and that would be parameters. As Mr. Montello said, I mean, we have the power to control that, what they're going to be set at. I certainly wouldn't be my intent to do anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? And then, again, we need to vote to suspend the rules, so your discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chief, I know you had many complaints from me on Dunham Road, Turney, Rockside, Schreiber, and I was against, like Ron, against the, putting up cameras. But after hearing like your concern with the officers and every call I got, and just like Bob Halen over there at School Guard calling me, telling me about the speeders. And when I would call in, and we just didn't have the patrol cars and the personnel. Now we're in worse shape than we was before. And after reading the third party, am I reading this correctly? There's a third party that reviews it's gonna be 10 miles over the speed limit, correct?
I don't know that for a fact, but whatever was said, I'm sure.
That's what I thought I heard. 11
Maybe.
miles, then you get a ticket. I
Okay,
think that's what I understood.
You said 7,
11.
11?
Or over
I think it's
10.
10.
It's actually
Right,
outlined
right,
on
right.
page 9.
Right.
He's saying it's 10,
Yeah.
he's saying after 10 we go over, so at 11, they would be your specification.
Okay.
So
Right
it's
now,
10
the
miles,
ordinance
then
is
they give you a
16.
ticket for 11 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Right.
So anybody, including myself, that drives 11 miles over the speed limit, 35, 46, I mean, they deserve a ticket, so do I. So I'm for it.
Okay, I mean, yeah, as we discussed, I mean, and you're right, I mean, in terms of your assumption is, and again, my conversation with Mr. Brownlee after the last meeting, the reality is, we have 3 school zones, for example, during the course of the school day. If we put it on a general day, we only have 5 officers working. So the minute somebody gets a call that requires 2 people, those school zones, there's no school zone enforcement anymore. This is a no-cost way to effectively enforce those traffic laws and monitor, and actually probably correct the speed even more so than the uniform patrol will. Because look, when people know that there's cameras out there, whatever the stigma may be attached to, the reality is they work in terms of controlling behavior. That's it. I mean, people go downtown, they stop, they slow down, or they observe the red lights. So for that reason, I would ask council to pass it.
And that's also a good point on your part, that we only have 5 on patrol at
On
any
day
given
shift.
time.
Well,
On day shift.
On the afternoon it gets more, but I mean, we're busy. So.
Great. Thank you. Anthony?
I just had a quick question, Chief. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your first statement. You said you didn't like the program because you didn't have enough officers?
No, what I said was, prior to hearing anything about it, I didn't like it. I just didn't like the idea of traffic cameras.
Okay.
After hearing about it, hearing how they run the scene, and listening to what the program is, I am in favor of it.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, because we tried to bring this up years ago and nobody was in favor of it. So now we're even shorthanded and now everybody's in favor.
Well, I see a benefit to them because it can do something that we're just, quite frankly, not staffed well enough to accomplish.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Tony.
Chief, to the best of your recollection, how many children were hit by cars maybe in your tenure? Because I remember a few years back, there were a couple that were hit
Since
on
I've been here?
Lawrenceville and Raymond.
Well, I mean, there's, I don't have the figures in front of me, there were certainly some high-profile ones. The one that comes to mind, by Michael Center is Precious Howard, that was back in like the late 90s.
Right.
There have been others, I mean, there's some every day. I mean, fortunately, that doesn't happen a lot, but it's, obviously this is something that can address. I mean, it's just simply a matter of keeping people slowed down, whether it's the school zones or whether it's just on the city streets, to make sure that we don't have those kind of incidents.
Okay.
Madam Chair. I had
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. My concern about suspending the rules is that even as I read through it, there were errors, typographical errors, and some of the sections that referred, areas that referred to another section appeared to be incorrect, and there were some other things I think we should discuss. We haven't even, it sounds like most of us aren't even sure what the limits are, where they're set. So I think we should be discussing that before we decide to put this on the third reading and to pass it this evening. Because what we have in front of us is not what will be the final copy, because there are errors in it.
Do you have a comment on that, Tom?
Well, I'm not sure if there are or not, but there are. Well, I just want to make a point too, also the cameras will be a safety factor. Before we get to that, but that we can use them for solving crimes as well. Don't be like cameras monitoring the streets for us. So that's also a benefit. And then there is a review process. Someone was asking about a review process. The independent person will probably be our magistrate that we have up in the mayor's court. Someone should challenge the validity of the ticket. Either the chief or probably I or probably the magistrate can. We could have the ability to you know, if you want to take it out if it need be, and if it, so there are some, and then there's a number of exceptions in the ordinance itself. You know, Kathy did change the, go ahead, the letters around a little bit because it didn't jive with, go ahead.
In our codified ordinances, we denote our paragraphs a certain way. We use numbers, then we use capital letters, and then we use small letters. The ordinance that they gave me was completely different, so to pass it that way, put it in our codified ordinances, it would not make any sense to the rest of our codified ordinances if you could follow it. So, in other words, we say number 1 and the subtitle capital A. It's just a way that it's done in the codified ordinances. So in some paragraphs, they reference another paragraph. Okay, they'll say section 1B. So those numbers and letters have to be changed to coincide with the numbers and letters that I put in. That's what he's talking about. So it's just a technical change.
So the decision sounds like we're going to put this on a second reading, and hopefully we'll get the language corrected.
The lettering and the numbering.
Okay, let's do that then, and then we'll continue on with our discussion at that point.
Excuse me, Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, will we be able to entertain just general discussion on the ordinance then? So we have a few minutes before our next meeting begins.
Well, why don't we wait until everything is according to the way it's actually going to look? That way there won't be any question.
Well, if there are difficulties at that point in time, we'll just be delayed again, so we might to discuss it now would be wise in my opinion.
Let's wait until we get it all in absolute order. That way, as I said, there won't be any question. Did you have another comment, Mr. Jackson?
Well, yeah, I was wondering, was any of those cameras going to be set up on the sidewalks?
The way he explained it.
I'm joking, I'm talking about speeding, my chair.
Yeah.
I think you're asking about jaywalking.
So, all right.
We probably will set them up higher though, so nobody can vandalize them. That's-
They're very high.
Yeah, probably putting them on poles we talked about, or the,
Okay, so let me take the third reading off the table, actually, and then put it on the second reading. Okay, good.
So,
And then
Chair?
at that point, we will have enough information, and it will be absolutely correct, and we can go over it as we need to. In fact, if you have any suggestions, please send them on to Kathy, and we'll have ample time to correct anything that doesn't look like our ordinances. So, and with that,
Do we want to discuss the speed limits? Because it appears we aren't sure even what the speed limits are, maybe we should discuss that.
not a bad idea. I mean, does everybody, what's the going consensus on the speed limits? Anybody?
Yeah, if you look at page 9, at the bottom of page 9 is where it says limits. And it's,
Right now, the ordinance says 6, and you might, the two paragraphs said 6, and the gentleman that presented said
There was a typo.
the
on
school
it.
zones, the parks,
You can't.
residential is 6, the rest of it is 10. That's what they're.
so the limits set the minimum amount over that we can set these at. So as of right now, if you look at limits in paragraph 1, it's the school zones and parks, that's 6 miles an hour. And then in paragraph 2, on the top of page 10, it says everything else is not less than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So I thought that, in my estimation, seemed reasonable.
Yes.
Why don't we ask the chief, if you were sitting in a car and someone was speeding, what would be the speed that you would actually issue the ticket for? Because I don't think we're cops, so I don't think it's for us to really pull speed around,
well,
when they do it every day. How
how about if we get some input from Chief and also your officers before we make any decisions?
What's the question?
How many miles
The
over
question
the
was-
speed limit
Right.
does someone need to go to warrant a ticket?
Do you have a copy of the ordinance?
I do not. However, for the most part, it would be anywhere between 12 and 15 miles an hour.
Is that an extra one or something?
I know what it is.
Ten would make sense only because when you are driving under those like turnies and it goes from 35 to 25 to 35, most people in Garfield got caught in that transition and you're still in 35 to 25. Some people are going 37 to 25.
Well, and then
Like
from,
me when I got my ticket.
and what my understanding is that it can be altered, it can be changed, so. I don't know if 10 it seems to be too much or not enough.
Well, once an ordinance, so we just do it.
Well, we follow our ordinance.
As far as the fairness of the limits that are set here, 6 would be reasonable for a school zone. That would be very reasonable, probably we'd start right around 5, because you don't get much less leeway than you would. As far as in patrol, if you're actually in a motor vehicle, it would be anywhere from 12 to 15, and that would be the officer's discretion. You know, some may write 10 over, and maybe in a 35, they would write 10 over at 45, or at least initiate a stop. But as a general rule, at least way back when I was on patrol, it was 12 to 15 miles an hour.
Wow.
And
That's
again, part of that
generous.
may be, well, some of it may be time of day as well.
Right.
Again, you may be more generous at 3 o'clock in the morning than you would be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or rush hour.
And Madam
Okay,
Chair?
thank you. Let's look at the obvious things that we can change.
Well, do you want to change that?
If you're going to change.
It'll be on third reading then, and that's in the ordinance, whatever numbers you tell me to push.
So I think if it's all right with everyone else, take a look at the ordinance, we use the 10 and the 6, at least to begin with. It certainly wouldn't hurt, and we can always change it. Okay,
I don't think we want to change it after we have the cameras up, because I think we have lawsuits. Because if you give me a ticket at 10 over and then you change it to 15 and I pay the 10 over ticket, we have to decide, be satisfied with it and not budget.
Because this is going in the ordinance book too, this is an actual ordinance.
15 seems awfully generous. That's 35 plus 15, that's pretty bad.
Garfield was, I went 10 over plus 2. So I was going 37 and then
Madam
and
Chair?
that's 3 foot. And I was late. And I got caught.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
And just as for explanation, this is just setting the minimum. We can be much more lenient. Like if we set it at 10, we could cite people for 10, but we could change it to 15 if, you know, then the chief, I'm sure, would be capable of making those decisions.
And also, just so you know, if someone is challenging this thing, you know, the legality of it, they, you know, this may be short-lived, just like the
Internet cafes.
yes, internet cafes.
that's right, but we
But
can make
then again, maybe not, so.
Okay, so this will be on second reading, and at this point in time, it's almost 6:30 for the next
That's another
meeting
reason
to
for
begin.
hurrying, because you may not
So-
be around for long.
Right, right. And this meeting is adjourned at 6:27. Thank you for attending, appreciate